This video is taking a quick look at the introduction to Unit 3.4, which is on inequality and poverty. First thing that you need to make clear in your mind is the difference between equality and equity. So equity refers to fairness. It's very much a normative view in economics. What's fair for one person isn't necessarily as fair for another person. So it's difficult to quantify something like equity. Equality is positive economics. You can quantify it. Equality basically means that everyone's got an equal share of available income. So it is possible to measure the degree of inequality with any particular society. A couple of other terms that you need to be familiar with are absolute and relative poverty. Absolute poverty we tend to use in conjunction with any discussion about developing countries. So we use a measure of $1.90 per day as defined in a situation where people are living in absolute poverty. We don't tend to find people living in absolute poverty in a country like Canada, for example. However, we will see people in relative poverty. So this is relative to other people who live in that society. So you live on below average income, for example. There's no sort of agreed on percentage of average income that defines relative poverty, but often 60% below average income is considered to be that particular point. It makes it very difficult. People who live in relative poverty, it's very difficult to assimilate into that society and to contribute to it and feel that they're part of the society in which they live. In terms of other ways that we measure poverty, there's three that you need to be familiar with. One's the international poverty lines, which we've already mentioned, the $1.90 a day, for example. Another one is called the minimum income standards. And so this is a level of income that's required to reach the sort of socially acceptable living standard in Canada for a single person in a big city. So it does depend upon where you live, in which country and which city you live in that country. But Canada's got a figure of $22,000, for example, for a single person living in a big city. And then there is some composite indicators like the multidimensional poverty index. I'll just show you that here. It does indicate that living standards are part of this measure, but also education and health is also something that people are interested in when measuring that. There's some difficulties, of course, in measuring anything statistically in an economy, and poverty is one of those things as well. So, it's got different meanings to different people. We're trying to get some sort of global universal measure. It's quite hard. People don't always tell the truth when you ask them for information in surveys. Government stats are not measured in the same way and not always accurate. And governments have different sort of ideas of what is considered to be the poverty line anyway. We can measure, we can measure and illustrate the level of inequality in a country, and we use something called the Lorenz curve and the Gini coefficient. Standard level students just need to know what it looks like. Here is the Lorenz curve. What we draw, or what we show on here, is the share, percentage of people along the bottom and their share of income earned up the side here. And so a 45-degree line is the line of equality. So we would try and identify from the statistics what the bottom 10% of income earners, what share of income they enjoy, the next 10% or 20% or whatever you're measuring. And we plot those points and then draw the Lorenz curve from it. So this particular example here would have had all these points plotted, and then this Lorenz curve indicates the level of inequality. So the further this Lorenz curve is plotted away from the line of equality, the more unequal the distribution of income in that society. So if it came, as you can see on the cursor, I can sort of draw one in. This Lorenz curve here shows an economy that is even more unequal than the one that's shown on the diagram itself. And the closer you are to the line of equality, the more equal the distribution of income is. The Gini coefficient is just a measure. So area A divided by area A plus B gives us the Gini coefficient. The closer that is to 1, the more unequal the distribution of income is, because it'll indicate that this Lorenz curve is further out. Higher level students need to know all this and need to be able to plot their own Lorenz curve from data that might be given to them in a question. Just moving on, various causes of income inequality and poverty. There's 8 listed in your subject guide. And you need to be familiar with what they are, how they might lead to inequality and poverty. I won't go through every single one now, but there's our list. And then the final thing just to mention here, this is an AO3 topic here, so it could be sort of part B of a paper 1, discussion evaluation sort of question. So you're asked to look at and discuss the impact of income and wealth inequality on, first of all, lower economic growth, lower standards of living, or higher social instability. So income and wealth inequality might lead to any one or more of those 3 consequences. So you could get a question like the one here, using real world examples. This would be a part B of paper 1. Using real world examples, discuss the view that higher social instability is the most significant outcome of income and wealth inequality. And obviously you would discuss the reason why income and wealth inequality would lead to higher social instability, what the consequences of that might be, and then you would bring in other consequences like the lower economic growth and the lower standards of living to try and make your judgment as to whether or not it is the most significant outcome. Okay, and we'll use a separate video to sort of look at the ways government policies to try and deal with inequality.